Evening, everyone. Welcome to the AI user group. My name is Sinead, and this is AI for developers. I see lots of new faces and lots of faces we recognize, so I'll tell you what we're all about. So we are the AI user group. We are a group of professionals who are using AI in our professional day-to-day. We're looking for best practices and trying to figure out how to get more out of AI and put it into our workflows. Today we have a co-organizer. We are working with N8N. They have a lot of AI automation, AI-powered automations. They are open source, so they are ready to go for you to give it a try. We really recommend you check them out. A few more notifications from me. So today we will have Diwank starting first. We will then open up with Shanelle and then finish with Bill Raymond. We will then have a section of community news. And just to note that doors will close at 8:50. So I will be coming around to ask everybody to help us out with clearing off. We are always on the lookout for speakers. So if you are using AI in your work or know anybody that is, we would love to hear from you. You can email me at sinead@aiusergroup.com. Our next opening is for July 24th. So if anybody you know or yourself would like to chat to me at the end, come say hi, let's talk about it, see what you're working on. Great. And I would like to pass over to Diwank from Julep. He will be talking to us about how to build stateful AI apps in less than 50 lines of code. Please help me welcome Diwank.
Hey guys, nice to meet you all. I'm Diwank. I am an AI researcher. I am also a startup founder at Julep AI. My company, we build backend for stateful AI applications, and we do a ton of interesting research, which I would love to talk about. I'm also a coffee aficionado and pop quiz. Who knew that there are two O's in aficionado? That is something that I just found out. So, well, welcome. I will be talking about how to build stateful AI apps. The less than 50 lines of code part is clickbait. That's not what's going to happen. But yeah, so let me get started. Okay, so what is the state of the AI ecosystem today? One, it's fragmented. Two, there's no best way to build AI applications right now. And three, there's a big integration hell. If you are a developer or if you are someone who is thinking about building an AI product, right now there's too many options. You have things like vector stores, embedding models, generative models, different APIs, integrating them all together, tool calling, chain of thought, agents, and maybe 50,000 different frameworks. And it is extremely complex for any organization right now to build these and get it right. And if you think about, on the other hand, the state of AI developer experience, I think we all know that these applications are easy to prototype. You can whip open a custom GPT and add some prompts, add some tools, and see that it starts to work. But they're incredibly hard to productionize. And that's a huge challenge, and I think we're still learning to use these foundation models really well. Second, it's a moving target. GPT-4o was launched about 3-4 weeks ago, and everyone got excited. And then 2 days ago, Claude 3.5 Sonnet was launched. Which one do you use? It's non-trivial to move between each other. If you are a developer and you've worked with embedding models, there's an embedding model out every 1 week or 2 weeks. So there's a huge moving target. You start building something and the ecosystem, the fundamental foundation layer keeps changing. And last, but I think something that's really underappreciated is the impedance mismatch between current best practices, the way we build applications today, and what AI applications require, right? So if you think about it, what's something that we've come to be very, very familiar with in regular applications? If you're building a mobile application, microservice, they're fast, they are ephemeral, they're stateless, they're lightweight, and you can scale them very rapidly. On the other hand, almost all AI applications are slow, they take time, they're error prone, they're heavy, bloated with all kinds of frameworks, etc. And they are inherently stateful. There's no such thing as a stateless AI application because you have to save the history and build the context window and so on. So just to kind of round this all up, like we are in a transition phase where we're still learning how to use these models. We're still building the infrastructure. And I had a fun conversation just yesterday with a large enterprise company. They asked me what is the cheapest and best way to build a reliable app. And I said, just wait for the model to get better. That's probably the cheapest thing to do right now. But that being said, there is hope, and I think being first to market and pioneers is both exciting and strategically valuable. So what I have kind of come to think about AI applications, my research and our work, is there's this idea of the 12-factor application. And this idea was originally propagated by the Heroku founders and some really amazing people back in 2008-9, which feels like forever ago. And the idea behind a 12-factor application for Heroku is they need to be declarative, they need to be stateful, version controlled, and so on and so on. And I think that it is time for us to think about AI applications the same way. What is the hallmark of a good AI application that can scale and be reliable, right? So this is just my own personal thing, by the way. But I personally think that this is the best practices for building AI applications, and kind of borrowing from the 12-factor application that Heroku propagated. So I'll just quickly go through these, right? So one, it should be declarative. What I mean by that is the AI applications, if you think about them, are largely data. Again, something very different from regular applications, which are largely code. So I think it is very important for them to be declarative. And second, they should be composable. We expect, as these models get better and better at planning, doing things, prompts and applications compose into each other and flow, the logic and the data flows from one part to another, right? Third, and this is really important in my opinion, prompts are right now treated as second-class citizens. If you see LangChain or most libraries out there, they try to hide it. They try to put prompts behind functions because developers are used to writing functions and code and not prompts. But I think it is time to actually flip that paradigm and make prompts as first-class citizens. Fourth, they should be disposable and reusable. Fifth, they should be batteries included, because most applications will truly benefit from integrations and search as, again, something that's part of the stack. Sixth, they should manage context. It's very important to manage context and make sure that the models have all of the information they need to do what's necessary. And again, I'm not going to go, actually, I'm realizing that this is too boring. But last thing I would want to quickly mention is that I think it's very important also that these applications have the ability to do long-running background tasks. Like, can I tell my AI, talk to me every morning and check in how I'm doing, and play a song accordingly, right? So things like that. So this is kind of my vision of what AI applications should be like. So introducing Julep. This is a shameless plug for my company. We build a backend as a service for 12-factor AI applications, kind of like Supabase or Firebase for agents. We manage context. We manage. You allow you to create background workflows. The framework and the system automatically mines memories, and there's built-in RAG and ton of integrations. I can go through the concepts, but just to kind of come back to the title of the talk, which is building these applications in 50 lines of code. So there is code. I'm going to be coding in just about a second. Okay, so we basically have three main concepts, and the idea is how do you compose these ideas together and let the backend do everything else for you. So there's an agent. An agent is, and all of these constructs are saved in the Julep backend, and you can create these and then start integrate it within your applications. So one is the agent. An agent is essentially a construct for its prompts and its tools. Second is the user. User is an important construct that we personally feel is crucial for memory management. So in Julep, all of the memories that an agent makes are scoped to a user. And it's entirely optional. You may or may not want to link a user and store users inside Julep, but if you do, we can form memories about them automatically. And third is sessions. A session is the primary workplace where you can add multiple agents, multiple users, and then talk to them. And they can talk to each other. So agents can work with each other. Users, you can add multiple users. It could be your entire Slack channel, and they can just kind of talk to each other. Couple of interesting things. So if you see here, there's context overflow. So we have essentially taken best practices and the state of the art for managing context at the moment, which is the simplest one is truncate. So as the history is building up, you can just drop initial message, like older messages, and just kind of have that context. But we came up with something called adaptive context, which essentially continuously summarizes and extracts important information and sort of adds a synopsis, moving synopsis to the context. And you can set a token budget, which is essentially the system will try to keep it under that many tokens. So you can just say that I want the context to never exceed 5,000 tokens, and it will just try to do that. The last two, remember and recall, again, personally, I really like this simple kind of almost magical constructs. Remember is when you set remember to true in a session, it will create memories. When you set recall to true, it will remember those memories. And that's that. So, okay. All right, so let's write some code. I'm putting this QR code in case you would like to go see that notebook after the talk, but let me just switch to the code. All right, so this is a quick Jupyter notebook. This was created by an intern, obviously. So let me just get started. Okay, so Julep comes as a simple Python library that you can install. And let me just quickly show you. So Julep is entirely open source, permissively licensed under Apache 2.0, and you can host it yourself or use our platform. Here, these are just simple instructions for hosting it yourself if you would like, but we're today going to use the Julep cloud. So let's start. We're going to import some things. In the middle, please stop me if you have a quick question at any point in this exercise. So let's just create a Julep client. If you are using a locally hosted, self-hosted version, you can set the API URL as well. So let's create an agent. So today we're gonna just do a bunch of different fun exercises. So here I'm just creating an agent that can do research on a product. So instructions, the user will inform you about the product they want to focus on. You will ask and decide the product to focus on, et cetera, et cetera. This is simply a demonstration, so I'm not going to waste too much time on this. Okay. So these are instructions, and like I mentioned earlier, so we're creating an agent. We write things about them, instructions. All of the prompts, by the way, in the framework are first-class citizen. You can edit everything, and everything is essentially a Ginger template for those who know Python programming. Okay. The second step is we define some tools. So here we are going to search OpenAI forums for research on some of their products. And this is essentially, we have constructs we have utilities for simplifying this, but this is what the model sees at the end of the day. And like I said earlier, one big important focus for us is that this kind of stuff is as transparent as possible. So let's create some of this. Okay, so now we're going to create an agent with those tools and with the instructions that we gave it. But essentially, it's an agent that posts and comments on discourse forums for a given topic. And we're going to pretend this is an anonymous user who is a product manager at OpenAI that claims that they have invented AGI, but they haven't. And so we have our user, we have our agent, and then we can simply create a session and start chatting. One of the key things is that you can replace these prompts to essentially things like this. An agent, let's say, and so on. And what this allows you to do is you are talking to move these prompts around and make them composable, make them reusable. Okay, so let's create a session. And we can now chat with the session. So recall and remember are true by default. And so we gave it an instruction, which is, can you please specify what kind of feedback or information are you looking for? So one of the instructions was that make sure to ask and decide the product to focus on if it is not clear. And you can keep chatting with this session, and it will just remember all of the history, manage it automatically. I can set adaptive context to true. It will maintain the token budget. And most importantly, this is all stateful and taken care of, which means that if there's any failure in the background, we take care of it. And if there's any errors or whatever, we take care of it, and so on. And the last thing I quickly want to show you is we have documentation inbuilt as well. So you can choose to use your own RAG pipeline or use ours. One important thing that, and I'm going to come back to the 12 factors, sorry, for a second. Transparent upgrades is really important to me because I've personally been gone down too many rabbit holes of this new embedding model is out, this blah, blah, blah. And one of the things that we provide again is you can, if you're using our doc store, you can, you don't need to worry about what new model is out there, what new techniques for retrieval augmented generation out there. We will upgrade it automatically as and when new models come out. And you can benchmark them and you decide which ones to use and so on. Yeah, so I'm happy to talk more about, you know, the code that we just wrote, and you can, of course, capture this QR code and you can see that notebook. There's more examples down south. And two quick things that I want to talk about is an upcoming release, which we are hoping for sometime next week or maybe 2 weeks from now, is we're building tasks, which is GitHub Actions style declarative workflows. And you can make them arbitrarily complex that can run over months, years, doesn't matter. And then, of course, our memories are, you know, essentially mined using this background workers, and over time will be augmented with episodic, implicit, and semantic memories. So this is also coming up in the next release, and that's that.
Awesome. Let's open it up for Q&A, yeah? So if any of you guys have questions, help me out. I'm going to pass you a mic here, and please pass it along for me and stand up so our LinkedIn live stream can see you.
I'm happy to talk about research in general, questions about models. Yeah.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
2 questions. I saw the Python code you wrote to initialize this.
Yeah.
I didn't see passing any key to like a foundation model. Do you provide that, or do I need to pass that in?
Yeah. So we, you have the option from our, you know, so 2 things. One, you can host it yourself, connect it to whatever providers you want. Second, if you use this directly, right now, we forward the billing from OpenAI and Anthropic to you, and in the future will allow you to just set those API keys. We don't kind of want to handle, you know, user API keys because they're kind of sensitive.
Sure.
But yeah, that's kind of.
And then second question, you kind of alluded to it. You talked about being open source. What's your business model?
So our business model is open core. We are largely going to be, we're going to remain open source throughout and very permissively licensed, so you can do whatever you want with it. And our product is going to become sort of enterprise ready, you know, deploying onto your own virtual cloud and, you know, VPC. So that is, like, our offering is going to be essentially white glove for enterprise customers.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
Excellent. Anybody else? You can pass the mic along. Don't be shy, guys. Diwank, you were saying things that you would be happy to answer before we...
Yes, I would be happy to. I mean, in general, if anyone wants to diss on or talk shit about bigger companies, I'm happy to do that.
So the business model...
Please stand up so we can see.
Sorry, the business model, is it kind of like Linux and Red Hat? I mean, is it kind of an example?
So somewhere between Red Hat and I want to say Supabase or Vercel. So there's a hosted platform, and we are also working with a lot of enterprise customers where we are giving them white glove support and hosting things on their servers, because I think there's a huge concern about privacy and security of data, and we understand that, and I think we're like working with enterprise customers for that.
Awesome, great. Anybody else? No? Don't be shy. You have somebody here. You can ask any question you want. No? Yeah, I'd love to talk about like what you were up to before this, your whole background, and how you came to Julep AI.
Yeah, so my background is I've been working in AI for a very long time. This is my third AI startup, and one of my kind of core belief is that we can use intelligence to do some really meaningful work, and I'm just really excited to be alive at a time where so many new things are possible every day. I started my journey as a college dropout. I'm a dropout from Columbia University. I've been working in AI. I'm also a Thiel Fellow, and I am mostly excited about, these days I'm excited about how we can solve agentic problems, because those systems right now don't work and they're struggling to work. So I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. And can you talk to us a bit more about like other use cases and other things that you've been solving for folks?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think there are two broad categories of use cases that we personally see. One is chatbots, connecting chatbots with internal data and and some more complex workflows like customer support, where you do need structure. So our tasks feature is actually really in high demand for structured chatbot flows, because you can define that, do this, do this, do this, do this, and this is the flow that you're going to follow. For example, one of our clients announced they built a chatbot themselves using OpenAI, and they announced that if a customer is really, really upset, just give them a small cashback, or sure. And the bot started to give everyone a cashback, right? So that kind of structure is really valuable for them. The other kind of workflows that we're seeing are actually around code and solving, GitHub issues style workflows. So I think those are the biggest ones that we have right now.
Okay, awesome. Great. Anybody else before we move on? One last chance? Yes, Grace. I'll pass you this here. Thank you so much.
Hello, I have a very specific question. So I actually worked recently on a problem where I had a lot of different agents working together, each agent corresponding to a prompt, right? And what I found really useful as an abstraction, which I had to build outside of like the common libraries, was like a messaging interface, right? That would allow them to sort of like communicate with each other. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious what the interface is in Julep that is used to basically abstract communications between different prompts so that you can compose them together. Thank you.
Yeah. So let me come back to. So the like I said earlier, the workhorse of agents is, or workhorse of working with agents inside Julep is sessions. And this kind of allows you to segment problems in various different ways depending on the domain. So for example, you can create an agent that has certain prompts, of course, as usual, but you can then add tasks to that agent. So every task is actually scoped to an agent. So you can add, let's say you're building a research, some kind of a research assistant, and you have multiple agents working together to do the research. One of the tools can be that you start with a topic, you find related Google trending keywords, then you in parallel expand on them, et cetera, et cetera. So let's say you have a complex workflow that's like a task. And then you can define those agents, put them together, and then tell them, okay, here's the goal, start chatting. And they can then chat inside the session, which is a shared history. And again, that history is automatically managed the same way as if a user and agent were talking. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Basically, you have like a shared chat history.
Yes. Yes. And we automatically use the same techniques to keep it under the budget, make sure any important information is not lost, and so on.
Awesome, great. Well, thank you so much. And Diwank will be here later for questions and networking time. Next on, we will have Shanelle Roman, if I swap my screen here, who will be talking to us about AI-powered scraping and data extraction with Indexical. And we'll just get set up now. Take a second.
Hello? All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Shanelle, and I'm one of the co-founders of Indexical. So Indexical is an AI-powered web crawling and scraping engine. So we allow developers to extract structured data from any set of websites, PDFs, and images with one single API call. So we envision Indexical becoming the de facto platform for working with web data. So any file format, any source, instantly gathered and transformed with the click of a button. So in today's talk, I'll be walking you through why we built Indexical, walk through some of the technical challenges that we've addressed along the way, and then jumping into a short demo for how you might use it to power your unstructured data workflows. So a little bit about myself. I'm one of two co-founders of Indexical. Prior to this, I was a PM at Google, where I led the advertiser experience for a new $1 billion line of Google Ads. My co-founder Vishnu is also here today, and he previously led a startup that was building in the e-commerce space that heavily leveraged web data. We'll both be available to answer any questions if you want to chat about web scraping, structured data, proxies, etc. And we built Indexical because we've seen firsthand how difficult it is to extract web data reliably at scale. We were both part of YC's Winter 23 batch, and we were originally building an AI dev tool that helped with production issue remediation. As part of that, we ended up crawling and scraping for a lot of developer documentation, so think API docs. And we realized how difficult it is to get this data into a consistent format, crawl through the website, and get it into a format that's intelligible to the LLM. And we realized with the recent wave of AI innovation that this was a problem that other folks would also be focused on. And so we decided to spin out Indexical and have been focused on it ever since. So to give you a little bit of an introduction as to why web data is useful and why folks might invest in web scraping. This is just a brief overview, but at Indexical, we've seen there's 3 broad use cases. The first is you might want to extract web data to provide input for your LLMs, either for fine-tuning your own model or to augment a knowledge base via RAG. So it's no secret that the reason that OpenAI, Google, Anthropic have been able to create LLMs as powerful as they have today is they've basically crawled and scraped the entire web. But even so, for a lot of companies, you still need to augment that model with specific knowledge for your use case. So imagine you're building in healthcare. Companies often will crawl and scrape for journal articles that come out past the cutoff date, as well as crawling medical resource sites in order to get that model up to the level of accuracy that their users actually need. Similarly, if you're building a customer support agent or a sales agent, companies will often crawl their customers' websites in order to build up a knowledge base so that way the agent can answer questions that's specific to the customer's users. Second broad category is competitive intelligence. This is frequent in e-commerce. So companies will often crawl their competitors' websites to build up a product catalog, ingesting both the products, reviews, as well as pricing. This can be used to build up market research and competitive intelligence, but also power real-time pricing algorithms. So imagine Macy's is running a flash sale on a segment of their product catalog. You at Bloomingdale's probably want to lower your prices to match that, so that way you can provide the best deals for your users. And third broad use case is you simply have a need for aggregated data that's recently updated. So you want to access web data from sources that don't have an API. One example use case here is jobs aggregators. These are companies that will crawl different career sites, aggregating job postings, so that way job seekers can have one centralized place to look for a job. Job postings come out every day. There's tons of sites, meaning that you have to build a ton of scrapers and refresh them in order to get this data scalably. So To our eyes, when you first start thinking about web scraping, this is an example of a careers page where you might want to extract some data. It seems pretty simple, but when you actually get into the nitty-gritty details, there's a lot of technical challenges. So for this example career page, to me, I would start by just like, okay, here are different job postings. I would click on each job posting, open it up, extract the data. And then it looks pretty simple that there's 59 different pages. So I would just click next 59 times to repeat that workflow. However, when you actually try to build it at scale, there's a variety of wrinkles that may pop up. The first is JavaScript interactions. So if you've ever clicked on a button or searched for something and the content on the page changes, but the URL does not, chances are the website is using JavaScript. So what that means behind the scenes is that the LLM has to identify that there's no link to click, but instead it has to imitate the experience of a human clicking on a button, waiting for the page content to refresh, identifying that the content is done reloading, and then proceeding from there. Second, it's no secret that most websites don't want to be scraped. So it's quite likely that this site, if you're repeating this workflow very quickly from the same IP address, going through all these sites, clicking next very quickly, that it might catch on. So maybe on the 10th next button or the 50th, it may A, throttle the traffic, so it looks like the page has mysteriously failed to load, or B, throw up a CAPTCHA. And third, the website format may change. So this is really common in any modern e-commerce company. Companies like Amazon are constantly running A/B experiments, experimenting with different layouts, different taglines, et cetera, to see what performs best for their users. With a traditional web scraper, you would use CSS selectors, so actually selecting content based on the CSS classes. With these A/B experiments, those selectors would break, given that the format is changing, making it really hard to extract web data at scale, given the way modern companies run. We chatted with one company where they were trying to scrape a site where on every subsequent page load, the format was changing. And even if you build it for that one site, imagine you have to scrape all of these sites. You can quickly imagine how you're constantly investing in both building scrapers and then maintaining them once they break. We've chatted with many folks who are trying to scrape upwards of 1,000 sites. So you can imagine how this very quickly gets complex. So this is where Indexical comes in. We allow developers to construct a domain-agnostic pipeline that describes how to go from a URL to clean, structured data that you can actually use. Each step in the pipeline has a natural language goal and a specific action, and then you can run that pipeline across an arbitrary set of URLs. So in this case, example 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Behind the scenes, what happens is we will take each of these URLs and each step in the pipeline and map that to the relevant set of actions and selectors in order to be able to accomplish the task. Behind the scenes, how this works is if you were to just feed in the DOM or the raw HTML into OpenAI, you would A, very quickly blow out the context window for large sites, and B, waste a lot of money on tokens. If you think about all the extra stuff that exists in an HTML, like script tags, CSS classes, et cetera. So what we do behind the scenes is we first start by rendering the page as clean, legible markdown. Then we do some post-processing to add back in any information that's relevant to the LLM. So in this case, it might be what's the title of the site, what are the title of job postings, as well as the links that they refer to, any elements that seem clickable, so any buttons, as well as any buttons that denote pagination. This will become the initial state for the first step of the pipeline. Then we feed that as input to the pipeline. And so each step in the pipeline has a natural language goal and a specific action. Each action is tied to a task-specific agent on Indexical's backend. So we would feed in that cleaned up markdown to the navigation agent and tell the navigation agent, find a page listing the open jobs at the company. That navigation agent will autonomously try to figure out how to accomplish that goal, seamlessly handling backtracking, retries, validation, proxy rotation, et cetera. It will then return the cleaned up markdown of the careers page of that website. We then pass that cleaned up markdown of the careers page to the next step in the pipeline, in this case, the extraction agent. And so the extraction agent will then try to extract the schema that has been described. So in this case, how to pull the job title. And it will return the cleaned up data, in this case, the job title. So the main goal of Indexical is to repeatedly extract the same set of information from a diverse array of websites. Of course, there are some technical challenges that come up when you try to actually productionize this. The first is, given the non-deterministic nature of LLMs, if you were just to feed in the raw DOM to OpenAI and ask it to pull a set of information, the information extracted may vary slightly from run to run. And second, sometimes it can be unclear to the LLM what information to specifically extract depending on the domain you're working in. So imagine you're working in pharmaceuticals or healthcare, and you want to pull, for a given drug, what is the mechanism of action? So how does it actually scientifically work? An off-the-shelf model might not have the necessary context, similar to how a worker working in pharmaceuticals would be able to understand the web page. So how do we imbue the agents with that context so it can reliably accomplish the goal? The first solution in Indexical we have is locators. The idea of locators is to be able to repeatedly extract the same set of information while also passing on cost savings and tokens back to you all. So what we do behind the scenes is when we first run Indexical's pipelines on a new URL, we will use the LLM to create locators, which is basically a mapping between, for a given task and for a given web domain, what are the relevant XPath or CSS selectors to accomplish the goal. We will then try to apply that locator on every subsequent run. Anytime the locator fails, we'll use the LLM to construct new ones. So Indexical is constantly getting better and cheaper for you over time. The other benefit here is it also allows us to have a human-in-the-loop experience. So if you aren't a fan of the way that Indexical is currently extracting data, you can then edit the locators that are used by the Indexical developer console. So you can say, for a given step and for a given domain, here is the CSS selector that you would like us to use going forward. This ensures that you can always have 100% consistency, which is the benefits of manual scrapers, while the self-healing and flexible nature that comes with AI. And the second approach we've taken in Indexicals is we allow you to actually provide examples to basically tune your agent to your specific use case and train it on the task. So going back to the jobs aggregation use case, you can provide examples of here is input that might appear on the web page, and here is what I would like Indexical to output. So in this case, I would like to categorize, like, what is the industry of the company posting the job? So I say, okay, the category is industry, the description is industry of the company posting the job, and here are some examples of what appears on the web page and what I would like Indexical to extract. We then use this with few-shot prompting to basically augment the agent and help train it on that specific task. So I'll now jump into a brief demo. All right, can everyone see what I'm presenting? Perfect. So going back to the jobs aggregation use case, let's say I want to pull the job postings for two sample websites. So loop.com and Scribe. So let's start by walking through the workflow for how I would actually extract this data. For Loop, I would go to the careers page, and then there's a bunch of job postings. And so I would open up each job posting and extract the data from here. For Scribe, it seems like the careers page is not up at the top, but if I scroll down to the bottom, we can see that they do have a careers page. Open it up, scroll down to the bottom, and the job openings are here. So let's take a look at how we might do this with Indexical. So I would first start by creating a pipeline. So let's name this jobs demo. And so the action that I would like to take is navigate, because I would like to find the careers page. And so then I simply give Indexical the natural language goal. So in this case, find the page listing job openings at the company. And then let's double check that we end up at the right page. So the way I would do that is I would do action, extract, because I would like to pull some information, and then I would describe the schema of the information I'm looking to pull. So in this case, I just want to check that I ended up on the right URL. So I'd pull URL. And Indexical actually provides a variety of special values that denote common data tasks. So in this case, we have one for URL, which basically denotes here is the link to the page that we end up on. So once I save this, I can then run a pipeline on this. So I would simply select jobs demo, and then I would get these two URLs. And then create run. So while that's running, I can walk through a couple of the different settings that we offer at Indexical. So Indexical is by nature an API-first product. So we have two endpoints: pipelines, where you construct the data extraction workflow, and runs, which is where you actually run that workflow across an arbitrary set of URLs. For each run, you can edit either via the console or via the API, but we allow you to set whether or not you get the response synchronously as a response to the API, or asynchronously, so you can get the results either via a webhook, download via the console, or just use a GET request. We also allow you to edit the concurrency, which is basically the number of links that we will open up at the same time. We have customers that are running over 1 million extractions per month, so you can imagine that you'd want to set the concurrency pretty high in order to ensure that the job finishes up in a timely manner. You can also select whether or not you want JavaScript enabled or not. By default, every website that's loaded with Indexical is loaded in a headless browser with JavaScript enabled. So the experience is similar to what a human worker would see when they're opening up a website on Google Chrome. And then finally, we allow you to select whether or not you would like proxies enabled. So when proxies are enabled, it basically means that to the website, it looks like a bunch of people are opening up different sites around the globe at the same time, as opposed to one bot. So this helps you avoid CAPTCHAs. So let's take a look at the results. Okay, seems like it's still processing. And then you can also generate API keys as well as look through the documentation. So for each pipeline, you can edit and share, and we also support a variety of special actions. So actions are basically the set of different options that we support. So you support like navigation, which we've shown so far. Navigate many, which is basically like if you have like a list of links, you can basically open up each of these list of links. Okay, let's take a look. All right, so we see one result so far. We can take a peek. All right, and you can see here that we've successfully navigated to the careers page. Cool. So now let's proceed with the extraction. So now that we know that we can successfully navigate to the careers page, we now need to navigate to each individual job posting. So we now do action, navigate, but since there's multiple job postings on the site, we would want to do navigate many. This basically denotes opening up a bunch of different links from one page. And then the natural language goal we would give is open up each individual job posting. And then once we've done that, that assumes that in the next step in the pipeline, we've ended up on one individual job posting. So then the next action we would like to do is extract. And now we can describe the schema of the information we're looking to pull. So I want to probably pull the job title, since that's pretty important. And Indexical uses JSON schema. So if you're familiar with OpenAI function calling, it's the exact same thing. So the type is string. And then you give a description to help the AI understand, like, here's what I should actually pull. So the title of the job. And then I want to pull the job description. We also support, and so I just want to pull like the main content of the job description. So another special variable we support is main content. This basically pulls the content of the page as human readable markdown. So if you're doing a lot of crawling and scraping for LLMs where you just want to get the raw content of the page, this would be what you would use. And then finally, I want to pull salary. The type is string, because I want to get all extra information, including if there's benefits. And the description is salary of the role. So once I save that, oh, and then I can also just limit it to 2 so we can get the results a little bit faster. Okay. So now I can clone the run to restart it. And while we're waiting, I can walk you through a couple of the other features that Indexical supports. So the full list of actions we support are listed here in the documentation. We've already covered navigate and navigate many, as well as extract. We also support question and answering. So if the information that for the question that you're looking for is not verbatim presented on the page, you can use Indexical to do more, to answer questions that require a little bit more complex reasoning. So example use cases might be summarization or categorization. Extract many is useful if you have a table where you want to extract subsequent rows. So think you want to extract prices on an e-commerce listing page for a variety of products. You can simply describe the schema of one item, i.e. the product, product name, price, image, etc. And then Indexical will then try to extract that schema repeatedly across the same page. We also support form manipulation. So if you want to select filters or search, etc., we can do that and then pull the extractions from the next step, as well as integrate with search queries. So if you don't actually know the URLs for which you would like to scrape, but you know the query that you would put in at Google if you were like trying to find this information, you can simply use the search action, include that natural language query, and then Indexical will then crawl and scrape the first n links from that page and then proceed on from there. If you actually want to productize this and get this information into your database, you can then, when you actually start a run, you can also include the webhooks. So this basically sets up an automatic action for when the run is completed, either to transmit the data directly or to just notify you that the run is done. So let's take a look at the results. So we have 2 so far. So you can see here we have 2 results so far for Loop, where we're able to get the customer success manager and the job description for both. Refresh. All right, let's wait a little bit longer. So in addition to that, we also support anti-CAPTCHAs. So in addition to simply just rotating proxies, you can also integrate with our anti-CAPTCHA providers, which will basically enable you to access more difficult to reach sites that are more aggressively anti-bot. As well as if you're trying to crawl through an entire page and you know that like you've already scraped a site previously, you can block certain URLs. So this allows you to basically like scrape a site repeatedly, but only scrape the new URLs if you're trying to like refresh postings, for example. As well as like match regexes and support validation. All right, the results are complete, so let's take a look. So you can see here we're able to pull not just the title of the job, but then also the salaries associated with it. So salary, 160K, equity, and benefits. So that's Indexical in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I know there was a question in the audience, so I'll pass the mic. And if you can stand up with your question.
Hello. Thanks for giving the presentation, Shanelle. I have a question about, is there a way, like a webhook that supports if your scraping gets blocked for certain URLs? Is there a way to output like which ones failed?
Yeah, so basically in this one right now, we didn't have any errors, which is nice. But so you can see like the default format for the results is you'll have a JSON where the results are in the results key. But if there's any errors, you can also see it right here. So you can basically do a webhook to transmit and then see like what the whether or not the errors array is not empty.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I'd like to discuss this from an ethical standpoint. You had pointed out that you had mechanisms for defeating captures and anti-bot mechanisms. This is not necessarily specific to this product, but all the content on the internet has been created by human beings that at great expense created what it is that they created. And what tools like this do at scale, and which the big providers do at scale, is to essentially extract value uncompensated to the people who have actually created it. And so I can't help but see that this kind of mechanism can be used as a manner of essentially taking what does not belong. And this is a tool that facilitates that. So I wonder if you might speak to the ethical and legal aspects of that.
Of course. So web scraping is something that's been around for decades and has a pretty long legal history. So the Supreme Court has ruled that like web scraping is legal as long as it's on like public data. Our broad position is that we think that like as the web continues to develop, obviously like agents will continue to like crawl and scrape the web. Of course, we'll respect like a robots.txt file, but we do believe that like there are companies that are looking for web data and we want to respect that as well.
Great. You can pass the mic along there to whoever in the crowd.
All right,
Go.
thanks. I had a question.
Yeah.
I had two questions. So one of them is, have you found any clusters of your first customers? Like, are there certain sectors where, we're getting some good luck there, and then maybe you lean into that sector? Because the tool looks very general purpose.
Yeah.
But sometimes for a small company, targeting a few sectors is more efficient with your resources. And then secondly, how do you charge?
How do I what?
Charge, make revenue.
Yeah. So the broad pattern we've seen with our initial customers is these are companies that are looking to scrape the same set of sites on a recurring basis, and currently they're investing a ton of time and effort into maintaining them because these are sites whose formats are constantly changing. One example industry is jobs aggregators. So these are companies that want to crawl and scrape for career postings across a variety of websites. Postings come up every week, so it's really important to maintain on top of it. And then for pricing, we charge on a volume basis. So we have a credit system where basically we charge for proxies, extractions, navigations, et cetera.
Is it free if you do less than 100?
So right now we're working with design partners, so everyone on the platform is a paying customer, but we are planning to launch a self-serve tier in the next couple of weeks. So at that point, yes, you can sign up.
Let us know.
Awesome. Great. Time for a question or two more.
Hi, again, thank you for the presentation. As somebody who isn't like a developer, you put it in as layman terms as possible, so I really appreciate that. I'm really excited about this type of platform. My question to you is, I guess, two-part. How do you see your product being applied within the college student space, where there's a significant amount of research, and especially in masters and above, that's a significant amount of research? How do you plan on rolling this out for non-engineering like students? So again, it's like easy to just jump in. And then the part two, which it's an election year, how do you see this being utilized within campaigns to scrape like voter data and politics data and all that good stuff?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Indexical is, by its very nature, a developer-focused product. So I think for right now, as currently designed, we would imagine that this would be primarily used by technical students at universities, potentially for data acquisition needs. So let's say you're working on a school research project and you need to gather a data set in order to basically come up with a response for an essay. The Indexical will be useful for gathering that data, since it already exists across the web, and then transforming it into a usable product so you can focus on the more interesting work, which is the analysis. And regarding election years, I think as of right now, I don't see that there's a ton of use cases for like campaigns, for example, accessing voter data, but of course we would be interested and excited to explore that.
Excellent. I was going to say, I think we're going to have to move on, but you'll be able to catch Shanelle at networking. I'm sure you have loads more questions. Give it up for Shanelle, guys. Next, we will have Bill Raymond. Bill will be talking about from prompt to production, how to build a custom GPT. So we'll just take a couple of moments to get set up.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone on LinkedIn. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Bill Raymond. I am the founder and CEO of Cambermast, based here in San Francisco. And one of the things that we do is help enterprise clients deliver really large, complex projects, whether they're implementing a SaaS solution. Usually there's a lot of software development involved. And one of the things that happens almost every single time I come into the company, they're really big and they say, hey, you know, what we'd really like to do is get this project started. How do we do the project? How do we deliver? And I say, well, let's follow your best practices. And they said, well, we're kind of looking for you to do that. And it happens fairly frequently. So what I learned is that over the years, I had to help organizations through the process of going through change management just to deliver something. Then we can go through the process of doing digital transformation. So we might call that project management in some spaces. We might call it Agile in other spaces. We might call them frameworks or methodologies or what have you. But that's what a lot of what I do. And it's really been a fun and exciting time. And I just went through some pretty big transformations in about the 1999 period, and I was really excited. I was going to sit down and write a book, and then, in 2000, of course, I said 1999, didn't I? So, in 2000, we had, COVID hit, and guess what happened? No one was going to talk about delivering any big projects. So here's what happened. I decided, well, a lot of people are going to be working from home. Companies are going to be changing very quickly. And what we need to do is figure out how to help all those people that hadn't thought about digital transformation and change do that. And so that's when I started a podcast called the Agile in Action Podcast. And I'm really excited to announce that we just hit this year over 22,000 unique listeners on the podcast. Our customers, our listeners, the people that listen, it's a free podcast, and it's also available on YouTube. We have them all over the world, the top three being the US, the second US, Finland, and Brazil. So I have some great people on the podcast that I've talked to over the years, and I learned a lot about podcasting. And one of the things that people always ask me is, what's something that you learned from these people that you talked to? And we had some pretty amazing people, like the people that founded the concept of lean software development, Mary and Tom Popendick. So it was really cool to talk about that with them and then also share that with people. But as they're asking me what I'm learning, I'm thinking, wow, it would be really cool if there's other ways that people could learn. And I guess I would like to ask this question right now, and apologies to anyone that might be on LinkedIn. How many people know what a podcast is? Okay, so most everyone in the room knows what a podcast is. I sit down and I record someone else talking to me, and we have a conversation, and then we publish it out. And it gets distributed, and I can talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But what I wanted to do was take the people that didn't necessarily want to listen to podcasts or want to listen to 3 podcasts in order to get information that they wanted. So I thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool? And this has kind of been an experiment for me right now. It might actually turn into a business, who knows? But right now what I wanted to do was take this new capability that OpenAI provides on ChatGPT, and it's the ability to create your own custom GPT. So imagine that you have this question. I want to create a psychologically safe space while I'm adopting Scrum, which is a framework for software development, and we're also using OKRs, which is another framework for managing work, objectives, and key results. Well, if I asked you to listen to my podcast, I'd have you listen to probably 3, 4, or 5 of those in order to get that information. So wouldn't it be cool if I just showed you how to get to a chatbot and you can ask that question right there? So that's what I'm trying to do. So what I'm going to do first is show you where I'm at with the current version of this bot, and there's still things to be done. And then I'm going to show you, because this is a developers conference, how I actually did the software development, and we can get into it as much as we need to. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and take that question, and I'm going to bring it over here to ChatGPT. Actually, before we do that, I am just going to highlight a few things. And if at any time you can't see my screen, just say, Bill, increase the screen size, and I'll do that for you. But this is the homepage. This is one of our podcasts that was delivered recently by a fairly well-known and outspoken author. His name is David Pereira, and he talks about all of the traps that product teams get into where we start building up on a backlog and trying to take things out of our backlog instead of trying to add value to our product, and how we have to constantly step back and think about value. And so these are the types of conversations that I'm having: values, psychological safety, team formations, things like that. And I also produce the podcast on YouTube so everyone can see that. And the way I do that is by using some pretty cool technology, and I'm not here to demonstrate that to you, but I just think it's important to bring this up simply because it is an AI-first product. It used to be that someone like me, and this is actually the problem that I'm dealing with right now, and I'm going to show you how I'm trying to overcome that, is I would record the podcast, and it just goes into an audio file. And the way I edit the audio file, when I keep saying I have to watch this little waveform and kind of trap it, just do this little highlight of it, and then delete that waveform, and then hope that I got it right and didn't cut off some of the text. Now, you have products like this. This product is called Descript, and they're actually based here in San Francisco as well, Hayes Valley. And they actually create a product where you can import the audio. It figures out who is speaking, allows me to label them. It creates the text, and then I can just edit it as if it's a document. I don't like this conversation that we're having right now. I just select it and I cut it out. And now it's not going to be in my podcast. It's great. This is something that I think a lot of people are going to start offering in their products, but this is so far ahead, and you can see also that it allows me to templatize this and create this really nice looking video. So that's kind of the process that I go through, but that's not the process I've always went through. I actually had to do that waveform editing way back at the beginning. But I'm showing that to you now just because I want to show you exactly what I'm trying to accomplish, and then I can talk a little bit more about the challenges. So let me just go ahead and open up my browser again, and I'll head over here to ChatGPT. Now, I'm going to show you how I did this, but you can see over here on the left-hand side, it says Agile Assistant. If I select that, I'm now actually chatting with all of those people, most all of the people, we'll get into that, almost all the people that I had a conversation with. So I'm gonna go ahead and just paste that question back in. And I know it might be a little hard to see with that screen, but it says, I want to provide a psychologically safe space for my teams while adopting some Scrum concepts using OKRs. How can I go about doing this? So I'll press return, and what it's going to do is research the knowledge that's embedded in my podcasts and respond to you with some best practices as proposed by my guests. And it will provide that information in actionable ways so that you can understand exactly what's going on. And I'm just going to make note here that as you might be reading this, you'll see as discussed with Bill Raymond and Lisa Adkins. Okay, so it's actually pulling from the knowledge of this conversation that I had with Lisa Adkins about creating a supportive culture in your environment. So even though this, yeah, great, thank you. And even though this is not just, one conversation that I had, this was one of the things that it pulled out because it was so interesting. And why was it interesting? Probably because ChatGPT knows just how interesting that content is, maybe above and beyond some other content I might have on a similar topic. So, I could, of course, keep drilling down here and asking more questions. You'll also notice down here at the bottom, it provides links. Now, this is something I'm still figuring out. For some reason, the links don't work. I don't know why. I'm still figuring that out. But it gives you enough information so you can just copy and paste that and say, I'll go to the Agile in Action podcast website and search for that, and boom, I can listen to the podcast if I really want all of the details. So that's what I did, and that's the journey that I'm going on. I'm doing this for two reasons. One is I want to stay up to date on how to program with AI tools. I'm also learning Python. I call myself an occasional developer because you definitely don't want me writing production code for your organization, but I understand now better how it is that you need to go through getting data and finding its way into a system like this. Now, you might know about GPTs already, and that there's a few different versions of those. The one I'm using, you upload a document, ChatGPT analyzes that document, and then does the responses. So you might be thinking, well, Bill, just take all of those things that you had in Descript there or whatever and combine them all and upload them, right? And unfortunately, that does not work. And I'm going to explain why. Let's find our way back over here, and I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. The first thing that I'm going to show you here is the list of all of my podcasts. Now, along the left-hand side, it doesn't really matter the names a whole lot. All you can see is that there's a file name that has the date and then the title of it, and everything's separated by dashes. On the right-hand side, take a look at what you see here. There's 3 dashes at the top, followed by down at the bottom, 3 dashes down there. This is what we call YAML front matter. For anyone that's a software developer that knows what YAML is, this is a way to represent data inside of a file and do it in such a way that it's easily understood. So that's what this is here. And you can see if you take a really close look at some of this data, you can see there's a layout that I have for the website, the categories, the date that it gets published, who wrote it, a link to the file, and it includes the guest name and the guest title and links for the guest. But at the end of the day, this YAML front matter over the years has changed on my website. And I don't go back and fix it, I just add to it. So first of all, if I were to take all these documents and upload them to ChatGPT, it wouldn't necessarily know the differences right away. It may confuse one thing with another. The other thing that we have going on here is that the content is down here, okay? But some of them don't have a transcript at all. It's just maybe a 2 or 3 paragraph sentence. This is what we're talking about. It wasn't until later in life when I started using that product I told you about, Descript, where now I can actually have a little overview of the podcast. Actually, let me go further in life. And there we go. So this is what a typical podcast looks now. I have all this front matter, this metadata that describes the podcast. And then down here, I have a little summary of it. And then further down here, you'll notice every single one of my podcasts has the words transcript with 2 hashes. And those 2 hashes will show up as a title when it's displayed in the browser. You won't see those 2 hashes. You'll also notice there I am, Bill Raymond, and then here's our guest talking further down the line. Looks like I talked a lot before that person. Oh, let's look at someone else. There's me. And then there's one of my guests, Nader K. Rad. And so what's happening here is that all of this is formatted in Markdown. But really what I kind of want is something that looks more akin to this, which is a PDF document. And you can see here, now we can have the title of the podcast. It's nicely laid out with the publication date and things like that. I'll zoom in a little bit, and you can see the transcript. So it's a little bit more nicely formatted. I'm not asking ChatGPT to try and figure out some code. It now knows exactly the structure that I'm using. And by the way, this has all of those podcasts that I was referring to. So how did I go about doing this? Well, the first thing that I attempted to do, and this was actually a pretty bad attempt, by the way. Has anyone tried to do coding in ChatGPT? Raise your hand. Sorry for LinkedIn. Okay, I see a few hands went up. Not a whole lot of hands went up, but maybe you use a built-in AI inside of your software development tool. That's probably a possibility too. But I really wanted to learn how to interact with ChatGPT or some sort of an LLM, so that's ChatGPT, Claude, Llama, things like that, and ask it to have it code for me. And my first prompts were like, hey, I've just got a whole bunch of files, and these are Markdown files, by the way. That's what my podcast format is. That YAML front matter that's in transcript, that's Markdown. And I said, I have a folder with all these Markdown files. Just combine them together, get rid of all the Markdown, put the title and the date. It created all sorts of crazy code. It didn't fully understand what I was looking for. It would write it sometimes in C++, sometimes in JavaScript, sometimes in Python. So I didn't have any control. So what I decided is I needed to figure out how I can put some control around this. And so that's what I'm going to show you right now. So as I mentioned, over here in Visual Studio Code, I have a folder with my podcasts. Some of them have the transcripts and some of them don't. And so what I want to do is kind of create a flow for how I'm going to get all of this data extracted and brought into that PDF format. So here's what I have on the right-hand side of the screen. First of all, I decided that I'm learning Python anyway, so I'm going to write it all in Python, and then I can automate it later. So here you can see that I'm going to first read all the existing podcasts, and then I'm just going to find the ones that have transcripts. Because if there's just 3 paragraphs of here's what the discussion was, that doesn't belong in my GPT. That's not to value add. I want the full conversation and the context of that conversation. So we're going to get rid of anything that doesn't have a transcript first. And then what we're going to do is get rid of all that YAML front matter, all that metadata for the document, and just put in the title and the date like I showed you in that PDF. Then I'm just going to make sure that that podcast does exist on my site, because there were a few people that were on my podcast who called up and said, I said too many things that are a little confidential. Can you pull it down? I changed jobs. I really don't want my name listed with that company anymore. Could you take it down? So I wanted to make sure that I respect the guests that are on my podcast and do not put something up that they asked me not to put up. So if there's a 404 error, that means that it doesn't exist on the site, and no scraper is going to find it because it's not there anymore. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to combine all those podcasts into a single Markdown file, because that's the format that I started with. And finally, we're going to convert that to a PDF document. And that's what I'll upload into ChatGPT. So let me walk you through what I did. First of all, let's just start with this one, where we're going to output the files with transcripts to a new folder. You can see I'm a very visual person, so I put these little Markdown, they're called mermaid charts on the screen, so that I can actually remember what exactly it is that I'm doing. And then what I even did is documented the way in which I got the code. So if I just open this up, it says, create a Python script for a Jupyter notebook, because that's what I'm working with, and have it do these things. And so this is one chunk of things that I wanted to do. Just go through and get the ones that have transcripts and put that into a new folder. That's my first bit of code. So what I would do is go into ChatGPT and literally paste that prompt in here. It's kind of a prompt, create this thing, the files are going to be in this folder, go through the files, get them, and then look for the word transcript, and if you see it, put it into yet another new folder so I can kind of track those. And I'll press return, and ChatGPT outputs the code for me. Now, what's really cool about this is after it's done, it's going to also explain to me what it's doing. So if I am not fully familiar with how exactly this works, it's describing it for me. And after a while, I can kind of take it upon myself to make the code even better. But this is my starting point. So what I can do is simply come up here and copy that code, and then paste that into my code editor, which is exactly what I did right here, and then just run it. So let's take a look over here on the left-hand side. You can see here's all of my posts. Now what I'm going to do is run that bit of code that ChatGPT created for me. And you can see this is the folder that I told it to put into, and those are all the files. Let's take a look down here. It says, here's your output folder, Bill, and also here's the total number of files processed, 56 of them. Actually, there's 129 files. So there's 56 of my podcasts that have transcripts in them. I have to sort that out later. Okay, but let's go ahead and move on. Clear all outputs. Okay. So that's the first step that I had to take, which was to just kind of get all of that content out. So output those that have transcripts. And then what we want to do is get rid of all that metadata. So again, all this 3 dashes with all this code here. Just take out the things that are pertinent, like the title and the publication date and the guest, and put that into the file instead. So what I'll do is come back over here and run that. Now, again, all I did was, I apologize for my scrolling here. This is the prompt that I created, and ChatGPT created the code. I pasted it in, and I ran it. And now what you can see here is that if I come over to this folder, and if I take a look at the results, you can see it processed 56 files. So 56 of these didn't have proper formatting in them that I'm going to have to investigate later. So now I'm down to 56, but let's take a look now. Notice that the file just has the title up here. I'm going to go to this one. The title is in here, and it says podcast publication date and the guest. And if I had multiple guests, it would list those. So that's how this code is working. Now, if I just continue down here, I'm going to check for 404 errors. And I said, okay, ChatGPT, here's my website. Here are all the titles for my podcast. Go up to my website and see if they exist. So I go ahead and run this code. And let's see what happens. It's literally going through all 56 of those files, going up to my agileinaction.com website, and it's telling me which ones don't exist. Okay, so I think I'm down to about 55 podcasts now. But yes, indeed, this podcast doesn't exist. The reason for why this one doesn't exist, I happen to know, is because we totally changed the name and we had a different conversation. So that's why that one's there. But we're still moving along now, and you can see each and every one of these is kind of going into a new folder, so I know exactly what I'm working with. So every time I process something, it goes into a new folder. And so this is really helpful for debugging and figuring out kind of what's wrong, if anything. And then finally, I go ahead and create a table of contents and a Markdown book. Now, I ultimately decided I don't necessarily want a table of contents for something that I upload to ChatGPT, but I can do that. And you can see here, this will actually create, did I run it? 40 combined. This is just combined right now, sorry. That's my combined file. And then I'll go ahead and create a PDF version. Now, I see that we're at about 5 minutes, so I'm gonna kind of cruise along, but now you see what it just did? It took all of my files and turned them into that PDF file for me. So this is what I learned, is that when you're trying to ask an AI to do work for you, give it a task, think of the first task, have it do that little thing. Think of the second task, think of the third task, break it down into small manageable chunks, and think about where you want to do checks along the way to make sure that your code is doing the valid things that you want it to do. Then by the time you get to this, what you can do is create the GPT. Now, I am not going to walk you through all of the details, but I am going to show you how this works. So if I go over here to GPTs, I'm actually going to go over here to Explore GPTs. You can see that other people are doing the same thing that I'm doing. There is a GPT store on OpenAI with all sorts of different chat GPTs to do all sorts of different things. And so I'm just creating yet another one. You have a create option here depending on your plan, and it actually walks you through the process to name it, to describe it, to give it the instructions and conversation starters. And then you can just upload your file, and of course, my file would be that that PDF file that I created. Okay, so once you do all of that, ChatGPT will then give you this user interface. And you can see here, I even added some common questions. Now, people ask me, well, how exactly did you program this? Well, I uploaded the file, of course, and then there's a few instructions that I gave, and this is what I'd love you to walk away with if you're creating a GPT for yourself, is when you upload knowledge, see I uploaded that PDF file, I have to continuously tell this thing, here's the file name. Make sure you use that file before you use your own knowledge. So, for example, if anyone here has ever heard of an Agile framework called Scrum, and I go into Bill's GPT and say, tell me about Scrum, it might just give you a response about what ChatGPT knows what Scrum is. But by my going in here and just keep saying, make sure you use the knowledge from my podcast first, then the chances of ChatGPT responding with people that talked about it on my podcast is much higher. And I'm happy to share any of what I'm doing with you if you are interested. So I know we're getting down to the last few minutes before we have to wrap up. Let me just go back here real quick. One of the things that I am going to do at some point is figure out how to get all of the content from my podcast that doesn't have a transcript and get that into my GPT. Now, I do have a tiny little bit of code here, and I can run it. How much time do I have? I have 1 minute. Okay, so I won't run it now. But that said, what I can do is actually read down the files using OpenAI's Whisper and actually have it figure out who the speaker is and create the transcript for me without me having to import that into my tool and do all of that work myself, and then I can put those in there. So, with that, I will do two things. One is I did just start a newsletter that talks about this and other things I'm doing with AI. That's the QR code for that. If you sign up tonight, I will actually give you a free pro account. So I'll leave that up on the page right now. And that's about $5 a month worth for free. And I'll do that forever. You won't have to enter your credit card or anything. So thank you so much for your time. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Awesome, Bill. Thank you so much. I think we're out of time for Q&A now, but I'm going to get people to ask you questions at networking. If that's okay?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry
No,
about
you're
the
good. You're
going over.
good. Excellent. Well, thank you, Bill. I have a couple of announcements, little things before we go. If you like this evening and you want to show support, you can find us across social. We're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram at the AI user group. We'd love it next time if you bring a friend or a colleague. Let's see, our next events, if you want to come back and see us at the next developer event, we'll be here on July 24th, but we also have some other events for marketers and designers, which you can feel free to attend. One on July 10th and another on July 17th. Now we have a space for community news. So this is a segment requested by the community where come up, make an announcement. Maybe you've got a job opening you want to fill. Maybe you want to just introduce yourself before networking. Talk about startup ideas, things you're working on, or maybe consulting opportunities. You can form a line here, and I'll let you go. I'll give you an example of this. We are running a AI engineering workshop, and we would love to give you guys a discount for that. So if you're on your AI journey, you're looking to boost your skills, you want to start building right away, this workshop session will get you there. You'll be able to network, you'll be able to meet with other people, and also get a certificate for that. It's quite a great discount. This is for the community only. So if you use that QR code there, you'll be able to get a workshop ticket for $29 instead of $199. So quite a deal. So I'd encourage everybody. I'll leave it up for a moment. Excellent. Do you want to come up for our open mic, please? And you could chat to LinkedIn Live here as well.
Hello, I'm Daniel. I am an ML engineer. And I have been working recently with a lot of people that develop in JavaScript, specifically people who are web engineers and application engineers, to try to figure out an easy way to help them test their LLM applications. The reason this project came up was because one of my friends, he is an application engineer, and he didn't have like a cheap and easy way to do this within his work. So I'm really interested in connecting with people who are not ML engineers, who are not data people, who are building applications and are using ChatGPT and are wondering how they should write unit tests and how they should be testing whether their application does what they want. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Anybody else before we close out and get to pizza and networking? Don't be shy, even if you just want to say hi and let people come up to you for networking. Yeah?
Hello, my name is Piercy PJ Bastiani. I am with the San Francisco Bayview newspaper. So I'm sure there's a lot of companies out here that at some point you're going to need to promote something or talk about your company or stuff that you're doing in your paper, especially as it pertains to diversity and inclusion and the Black community here in San Francisco. I'll leave my information, or if you want to find me during the commute or the thing after, come find me. We'll share that information. We issue out monthly in print, and we also do digital. So we can do ads on both. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's two great examples of how it's done. Anybody else before we close out? Okay, thank you so much. This has been the AI User Group. Again, thank you to our co-organizers at NADN. Really recommend you check them out. Thanks. If anybody want to get in touch with me, if you've had a thought about speaking or just want to hear more, reach out to me at Sinead@aiusergroup.com or come chat at networking. All right, let's go.